think I've said it before. You know, you can ask me anything. It doesn't mean I'll respond, but I generally don't mind people asking, even if it's something I'll say no comment on. And you can at least ask me. You know?
Okay.
You ask me something. You know, it's like as long as it's something, not something, you know, real personal, like how many hookers have you killed? You know, that's keep off record. I'm gonna get in trouble. You know.
Okay. All right. I want to try and keep it topical. So, the debate at the moment between Thunderfoot and feminist atheists. Do you have a position on that at the moment?
That's a difficult one. I've sort of been trying to avoid Thunderfoot. So about 2 years ago, I sort of unsubbed him during his whole civil war with Coughlin.
Oh, yeah.
It sort of, you know, it went off the rails there, and it just started to become, it's like, you know, Coughlin has his issues, but, you know, with this whole, you know, doing his couch psychology of you know,
so
scholarship of what kind of mental problems Coughlin has.
Oh yeah, the false analysis, trying to express points on things he does not know. Yeah, really, really pathetic. So,
and in general, I haven't heard a whole lot, but I definitely have some issues. I have issues sort of with both sides. This is one of those things where I flip-flop a lot, you know, because I think, you know, some of the feminists have overreacted, but I also think Thunderfoot's overreacted. So I'm sort of, you know, it also depends who has the best argument at the time, because the arguments flip-flop me a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I suppose there are good and bad sides to the debate. There are definitely some feminists who do go too far. And I think Thunderfoot's main problem in his videos is he doesn't make the separation between certain more extreme elements of feminism, or things that feminists may say which might be fairly extreme, and just standard, average women who want full rights and respect and equality. And, you know, he does that with every other denomination for that matter. Thunderfoot fails. Go on.
Well, one thing that drove me up the wall, and it wasn't just Thunderfoot that did this, a lot of people did this, is the whole issue of regulations about sex and whatnot at conferences. You know,
yeah,
and how people, how people took saying that maybe we should have precautions, took that to mean, oh, men are rapists. You know, they didn't understand. You know that. And I forget who did a real good video explaining part of why this is probably an issue, which is that people have two ideas of conferences. You know. The older crowd thinks of conferences. The people that are defending these regulations of, you know, a professional conference. You know, whereas the others are thinking of comic conference. You know, where it's just a loose group of people having fun. You know, Trekkie conference kind of deal.
Yeah, sci-fi con.
You know, they're thinking of it more as, you know, just a group where the other people are thinking of it as professional, and I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is. You know, the people that think of it as a Comic-Con are thinking that people are going too far, whereas those that are thinking of a professional conference are saying, no, we should, you know, this should be about atheism, not about who gets hooked up. You can if you want, but it should be, you know, cautions.
Yeah, I think it's one of those hot potatoes that no one really can get a hold of. And I think in my opinion, the problem is that some militant feminists are quite aggressive in what they say. And, you know, if you say one thing wrong when you talk to them for the first time, they assume you're this. You're some kind of negative persona of man. Because if you say one thing out of place, or perceived to be out of place, that's another thing, perception, then it's very easy to assume that you are an aggressive, masculine, operating male who only sees women as being objects, or at least being lesser than a man, or at least being lesser than yourself. So there's this kind of... Pardon?
You mean or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine the comments to this video right now. Yeah.
It's... And I think that's the other thing that kind of drives me up the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, the LGBT community is a bit wrong about this. Is there tends to be sort of an issue. I think it sort of reminds me of Chef from South Park.
Oh, yeah.
Make fun of any group except what group I'm part of. Suddenly people, there was an example of two lesbians. I don't know the exact story, maybe to right, but the story that I heard was that their two lesbians were at a comedy club in my local area, and this guy was making lesbian jokes.
Okay.
And he got offended and sued him. And I'm thinking, they're at a comedy club. What are you suing when you made fun of just about every other group? But when it was the group that they're part of, suddenly they get offended.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I don't know if you've seen Thunderfoot's, I think it's his most recent video. I haven't had a chance to watch his channel for a couple of days. Basically, is it Donglegate or something?
Oh, I've sort of been trying to avoid this one.
Yeah, that's been out there on a few channels, of course, and there was this joke made by a couple of guys, just playing upon the word dongle.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of a double entendre, a bit of a double meaning thing going on there, and it's been blown out of all proportion by both sides. And all it was simply a little joke between two guys. Not anything anyone really needs to take seriously. And on both sides of the fence, you've got, blocks of people basically expressing, serious points on this issue. And it's completely mental.
Well, I think people tend to forget context.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, why do we rail against, every feminist joke that conservative makes, that yet we never complain about Bill Maher? Because Bill Maher is saying it was just making fun. A lot of conservatives mean these things in hurtful ways. When they make a joke about feminists, they literally they're making it fun because they believe it.
That's true.
Bill Maher is just making a joke.
Yeah, the same, you could say Bill Maher, you could say Jon Stewart, you could say any number of different people who are, very comical, very intelligent, and, they can make serious points, but they also make kind of mockery points, and points which are, out there just simply to, obviously entertain as well. And the conservative side of politics, especially in America, I would say, is really has no sense of humour. Just, it's completely dead on the inside, in my opinion. Because there seems to be this terrible thing where you get people who are basically yelling at the microphone on various radio stations, or speaking to the camera in various serious ways. And what they're saying is so comical and so ridiculous in many cases. And yet they're being completely serious. And you get someone who's a comedian, like, Bill Maher or Jon Stewart or any number of different other, political comedians, and, people with talk shows and so on and so forth, who are making jokes that aren't, points that aren't entirely serious, at the very least, and people who are in the, who are right-wing, centre rights perhaps, they're just taking it as if it's the same as their nonsense, their beliefs they have. And it's completely insane to do that, of course, to treat it all as the same without thinking about, once again, context.
I think a good example Young Turks brought up was it's a bit older, so you may give him a teeny pass for this, but some senator or whatever made a joke about wetbacks. And people were offended, and so I think this is a context where he can be slightly offended because this guy grew up with an idea, where wetbacks was the normal term. Yes, it's a joke, but it's a bad taste joke. It's a joke that comes from a term where, where you make fun of Mexicans, because they're dirty, wet, Mexicans.
Yeah, I think there's a funny, thing with it, because there's a lot of fine line, isn't there? Very often a humour about minorities or about women or about any particular group whatsoever, really, can be taken by people who don't know better, people without an intellectual level to them or any great level of intellectualism. And it can be assumed that it's something that's genuinely true and factual about that group. People can, talk about feminists, and because of the negative connotations of feminism, in some cases, a very few cases I would say, it's kind of one of those things where it kind of makes those people who don't know better assume that the entire group is bad, and the same can be said for Islam, Christianity, atheists, anti-theists, and anyone really, where it's like the stereotype of homosexuality in the media is basically a man with a very effeminate voice, and very much the stereotype of the gay man, and really, being no morals whatsoever, of course, that's the idea, and basically shagging anything that moves, that also has a cock.
I've had people, say I can't possibly be gay because I'm not effeminate.
Yeah.
It's kind of the point where even I wondered that, am I just a human being because I don't fit, the stereotypical gay.
Yeah.
But then again, I fall more, I'm violent gay. I guess the best way to describe it,
Yeah. It's one of those things that, it's brilliant that people can be open about their sexuality, their personality, and everything else, but the idea that so many people are, this is the idea heavily perpetuated online as well, that, oh right, you're this, therefore you should act like this. You can't think outside this box. No, you've got to wear the assless chaps, and you've got to go and grow a great big moustache, and have a shaved head, and wear leather, that or wear pink, even better. A bit of makeup, perhaps. Yep, you're gay. If you don't do that, then you can't be gay. You must be bisexual.
Yeah, the whole. I have a term for this. I call it argument from incorrect definition.
Yeah.
Which is into this all the time. Where they either say that we're not an atheist because we don't believe X. Or that, or because we're an atheist, we have to believe X. They'll say that you're not an atheist, you're agnostic because atheists only believe 100% that there is no God.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is they say because you're an atheist, you have to believe 100% there's no God.
Yeah, no, it's completely insane. And the term anti-theist is equally as mixed up, because I very often said that anti-theist is a person who is doesn't believe that there could possibly be ever, in any shape or form, a God. But many anti-theists are still agnostic in that way. They don't really know there is no God. They just simply find a huge disdain and are indeed against religion. So in that way, any atheist who speaks out against religion could be labelled an anti-theist, in a way. But it's all semantics.
I didn't look at myself as anti-theistic beliefs. Like, I'm anti-theist, but only so much against beliefs. I'm anti-theist against certain types of theists, but that's more, not a general term. That's more like, your creationists, your bigots, your,
Oh, yeah. And,
the extreme versions. But I have no love for any religions. Mostly because there's no evidence for them. Just religions I wouldn't mind being true, shamanism, things that are a little more interesting, but,
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been trying to discuss with someone recently about psychics, and they've tried to say I've created a religion of my own from skepticism, which is a really bizarre idea. They don't really... They use the term skeptic to mean an absolute cynic. They have no idea of what the words mean, how they are used in sane society. And they just assume that because I'm being critical of their ideas, that I must be purely cynical of their ideas, and they say I've created a religion of disbelief in paranormal ideas. And what I did, this is a very easy way of dealing with them, is basically copy and paste the definition of skeptic and the definition of religion, preferably definition of religion, and say, does that really conform to me? And if it does, prove it. And then they move on. And then they try and say another argument which is equally as ridiculous. Just loads of straw man arguments to try and say, oh, yours is just a perspective, it's just a religion, and therefore their religion, their belief, must be equally as applicable. So they're just playing word games again.
Well, this is one of the things that sort of got me started making my own videos. Me and Bionic Dan's got into this huge fight with this one guy who, me and Bionic Dan were saying we were empiricists, and he kept telling us we couldn't possibly be empiricists because we don't know 100% of everything, and that... Yeah. He was trying to tell us that we were agnostic, and finally, and I've been doing this more and more, which is, I don't argue whether or not I'm an empiricist or agnostic or atheist. When you say that you're not X, I just say, okay. Let's take this argument and say that I'm not agnostic. I'm not an atheist, I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
What does that change? Like, how does that make anything different? I'm not suddenly becoming religious now that I stopped believing, that I'm no longer an atheist, I'm an agnostic. What does that do? How does that change, actually mean anything to the argument we're debating?
Absolutely.
You haven't done anything to actually,
It doesn't actually debunk anything in the end. Because all they're saying is, oh, actually, I think you would be defined as something else. They haven't changed your argument, they haven't debunked your argument, they haven't done anything. They've just simply said, well, I think, you're more agnostic than atheist, even though you might be atheistic. Or you're perhaps you're more anti-theistic atheist rather than being more atheist, anti-theist. It's lots of word games and playing around with definitions, and, very common for this is the idea that an agnostic does not know, and therefore is just waiting for the right God, which is a ridiculous idea, because obviously agnostics, they not only believe that no God has ever been proven, or at least many do believe this, that no God has ever been proven, but they believe it would actually be most probably untestable in many ways. And there's similar points made by deists as well, but it's a whole very, very general definitions that kind of bleed into each other. And with that, it's very hard to make an absolute when it comes down to the whole debate and the whole labelling process. And I don't like labels, It's like, I don't go into a room, or I don't go into a shop and go, hello, I'm an atheist. No one does. At least I hope they do.
Yeah, and there's so many of these issues, going back to the original part about being offended and whatnot, there's something that has driven me up the wall. We've always heard it. You have a right not to be offended. Like you can't make laws against being offended. But it's sort of gone to the other extreme of where you almost don't have a right to be offended. Because if you say you're offended, suddenly everybody says you're trying to quash free speech. Like, let's say, the whole issue, non-stamp collector, I don't know if you saw my videos on that, where he was saying that, we should not call moderates bigots even when they're being bigoted because, we're going to drive them away. But my point was that they are being bigoted, they are being offensive, and it's sort of become that we can't even say they're being offensive, because they were, because then people jump on you and saying that, you're quashing free speech by telling them they're bigots.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
All the time with conservatives, like look at all the stuff with the Supreme Court and gay marriage. Half the arguments are, well, this says, if this, if Supreme Court says that gay marriage is okay, then we're all going to be labeled bigots, as if that's a bad thing, as if, somehow, being labeled what you are means you can't do something,
Yeah, I don't really like the term bigot because it's one of those things which can be taken several ways at least. I think, it's obviously discrimination, it's prejudice, and bigotry does tend to raise the idea that it's more, although not necessarily, irrational and hate-driven. And I think, there are some people out there who do genuinely think that they're being very rational about it. Because, they believe their pseudoscience. They believe their Bible is the right way. They believe it's all right. And because of that, they think they're in the right. And they think they've got the moral high ground. And,
I agree with that. My only issue is that, we shouldn't be afraid to say that they're being hateful and bigoted, even if they don't think they're being hateful and bigoted, but most people don't think they're being racist. Most people don't think they're being, very few people think they're being what they're actually being, but they, and I think where this really bothers me is, I hate the sinner